Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're back on the 1965 Chevelle, the Malibu SS, and today we're going to be working on the seats. Now, if you've followed along, you know that I mentioned a couple times that the seats were clapped out. I don't weigh much. When I sit on them, my butt hits the floor. So I told the owner, call your upholstery guy and let's get those over to him and have the springs changed out. Well, the guy wanted a ton of money for it, and it wasn't in the budget. So I'm going to do it myself. We went ahead and ordered the springs we need, and that's what we're going to do today. So let's jump in here and start tearing this seat apart and see what we need to do. Okay, the first thing we need to do is take the seat back off, because we're not going to be doing anything with that. We just need to get it out of the way. So we got these little push-on buttons right here that kind of hold the arms on. They pretty much stay on by themselves. It's more decorative than anything. And these are probably going to get destroyed taking them off. So you just kind of get the pliers on there, yank on them. I dented it up, and the clip on the inside is kind of messed up. So I picked up new ones at Lowe's. These are actually 7/16 little cover caps, push-on caps. So you can get them. I think I was out $8, maybe $7, $8 to get 4 new ones. So no big deal. We're just going to toss that and get new ones. And the next step, we're just going to take the chrome trim off and get the whole back off. So I'll bring you back and we'll show you how to wrestle this thing off here. Okay, I got the chrome trim off. I got the little clips off both sides, and these are kind of sprung together. So you just kind of have to grab the seat, and the thing you want to watch out for is you don't want to yank this out and have it go right and dig right back into the seat. So be very cautious of that. You got to pull, and these have been on there a long time, and there's some burrs on here. Sometimes you have to, wrestle them around a little bit to get them off. And pull and rotate the seat just like that, and then it'll pop off. Then once you get that side off, then you just carefully go to the other side. Don't want to rip the upholstery because we're going to reuse it all. And you just kind of jiggle, and then you can pull the whole thing off. We'll set this aside so it doesn't get damaged. Okay, let's get this thing flipped over, and we'll get the runners off, the seat adjusters. Okay, so these seats, these aren't the original seat covers. I already did the driver's seat, and there was an inspection tag sewn into the seat cover on the inside, and it was dated 1995. So that means sometime after 1995, which was a long time ago, these seat covers were put on, and they were bought as a kit. You can buy them, all kinds of places, OPGI, all kinds of places have seat cover kits for these cars. So some upholsterer went ahead, took the old ones off, put the new ones on. There's some jute right here. This isn't factory, it's just usually burlap. And then, I don't know if you guys can see, but there are 3 coil springs right here. Now those coil springs, as far as I know, don't belong there. They weren't on the driver's seat, so I'm pretty sure they don't belong there. Probably what happened was the springs on that side were so clapped out that it was sagging, so they put those in to try to support that up and make it sit better and ride better. So we're gonna have to take a good hard look at those springs over there once we get this thing taken apart. So I'm gonna take the seat adjusters off, and before I do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and mark them here so I don't screw up, and I wanna make sure I get them right back where they belong. So I'll just put a little identifying mark here on each one, and that way when it comes time to put it back together, I'll know exactly which way they face and which side they go on. So I'm going to go ahead and take these apart real quick, and then I'll bring you back. We're going to start cutting some hog rings and get the seat cover off. Okay, before we start cutting hog rings and getting the seat cover off, I want to talk a little bit about the springs. Now, when I looked at these seats and checked them out, and I know just a little bit about upholstery. I helped my aunt and uncle used to do upholstery on the side at their house, and I helped them when they did the seats for my first GTO, and then I did help them out a little bit here and there throughout the years. And then when I did the seats on my 77 Corvette, I also did some upholstery. Now I didn't do any sewing. I had seat covers just like these that I had purchased, and then pulled the old ones off, put the new ones on, made some repairs, and put them back in service. So I do understand a little bit about, you know, upholstery. So when I was looking at these springs, you know, I measured them out, and I thought, you know, something's not right. They shouldn't collapse so easily. So I thought the wrong springs were actually in the seats, but these are the correct springs. These are 11 gauge springs. And so I decided to go ahead and replace these 11 gauge springs with 9 gauge. So this is a 9 gauge sinuous spring. The wire gauge is heavier, and as you guys can tell, it's wrapped a lot tighter. The S's are a lot closer together if I hold it up here. So the idea is to take the seat cover off, replicate all these springs with 9 gauge wire instead, or 9 gauge springs, and then put the seat cover back on, make sure the foam is in decent condition, and then obviously we got some repairs to do over here with these coil springs. I want those out of there, and then we'll put it all back together. So I've already done the driver's seat, and it worked out pretty well. So now all we have to do is just cut these hog rings, carefully get the seat cover off without damaging it, and then get the foam and everything out of the way, and then we can start figuring out what we need to do. So I'm just going to start cutting the hog rings. Now you need a good pair of side cutters for this. Now if yours are worn out or anything, go buy a new pair, because you know it's going to be tough. Some of these hog rings are fairly thick, and sometimes you can only get it with the very tip of the side cutter. So you need to make sure you got a good pair, and when you do it, you got to watch your eyes because they shoot everywhere. So I just kind of put my hand around it, and I have a trash can nearby, although they still fly around, because these will end up in your tire if you're working in the garage or driveway. So make sure you sweep up real well before you do it. So I'm going to go around and take the perimeters off first, and then so I'm going to go all the way around here, and then there's some here that pull the bottom back around, and then I'm going to slowly pull this back, and I'll bring you back when we're done doing that. But you got to figure out where they're all at, because there's hog rings all over the place. These guys hog ring the crap out of these seat covers to make sure they stay on here properly. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting, and then I'll bring you guys back, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, we got all the hog rings off on the base right here. There's still some hidden everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and start peeling this back carefully. We need to get it pulled away and then just off this ridge right here. So there's a wire stitched into here, and that's what the hog rings go onto. So that just loosens everything up. Now we need to flip the seat over. There's some hog rings down inside here that the other piece covers, and we also need to get the little stops for the back seat, or the back of the seat off. So we're going to remove these little rubber buttons right here. And be careful when you're taking stuff apart. This stuff's been together a long time. You just don't want to yank on it. You want to be careful. You don't want to tear or poke a hole or something. So you just kind of want to be careful. I kind of twist them and pull them off. So this seat cover is going to come off, but we have a few hog rings left to get off, and we need to expose those. And that's right in here. So this cardboard's pretty kind of old, so I'm going to be careful when I'm taking that off. But we have some hog rings that'll be down right inside here that I'm going to cut. And then we also have hog rings. Let me flip this over. There's hog rings down inside here that actually hold this portion down, okay? So there's actually a stitched rib on each one of these, and then that pulls that down and gives it the shape of the bucket. Now this one's pretty much flat, so it doesn't have a lot of bucket left in it. And these are actually aren't pulled down as far as they should be. They should be pulled down in there deeper so it looks more like a bucket, and we'll talk about that later. So let me go ahead and get all this off, and then we'll start getting the seat cover off here. Okay, to find every one of these little hog rings, it's pretty tough. So you kind of have to take your time and get down in there. There's springs now in the way, so we're going to have to search around in here to try to find these. Now, these hog rings need to come off one way or the other, so if you see one, just cut it, because you're going to be replacing all of those anyways. And there's nothing like, you can't screw up and actually cut something you're not supposed to. Really just pay attention and make sure it's not something holding something very important. But really, hog rings are used to hold the upholstery, there's other different barrel clamps that hold the springs on. So, and since we're going to be replacing the springs anyways, it doesn't really matter. So I've got a couple. I see one more here. So you just have to dig down around in here, and you may be clipping hog rings that aren't doing anything because it's very hard to push that together and hog ring that so it holds. So they end up usually hog ringing the crap out of it. Hopefully some of them are actually making a grab and clamping it down. So I'm going to go through here and cut as many as I can. Then what we're going to do is flip it over and start pulling the seat cover off, and so I can figure out if I missed any hog rings, and I'll try to reach in there and cut them from the top. Okay, let's go ahead and get the seat cover off. So you're going to want to turn this inside out. So this is pretty tight right here, so what you're going to want to do is just kind of pull on it and put your hand down in here, and what you want to do is use your fingers and help flip that over, just like that. So my hand is actually holding down on the foam on the inside here. I'm pushing down, trying to collapse that and pull that over the top. Okay, and then we'll just do the same thing on the other side. You just kind of pull, and it's a lot easier since that side's loose, but I want to put my hand right here, and I want to kind of use my fingers, and then I'll pull it over the top. So what we want to do is try to leave this foam and this cotton in place without damaging it. Now, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's a lot of, foam falling off here. These are, 57-year-old seats, so this foam is pretty worn out because it was exposed to the elements here. Underneath here, it's a lot better because that material is pulled tight over it. But it's still kind of falling apart, but we're not going to replace any of that. We may have to patch some on this, but we're not going to replace the seat bottom. But you can order those and get everything you need to make your seats like new. But your springs, like you'll see in this case, your springs may have to be repaired or doubled up or something to make the seat more comfortable. So let's go ahead and get the seat cover off all the way. So right here is where the bead is for the bucket, where it makes it so pulled down to make it a bucket. And this is the rod. This is fabric, like a steel wire with fabric wrapped around it, or tape. And so there's a hog ring right here. I can see it right there. So I'm just going to reach in there and cut that. Now getting them from the other side would be ideal, but sometimes you just can't see them because they're buried down inside the burlap and everything else. So I'm just going to reach in here and try to cut that, and then I can get it moved up. So even after you cut it, it still may be hanging on because it's kind of, hog rings are hooks. So you have to cut it twice to try to get that to lift up. So now I lift it up, and I can see there's a hog ring right here. Either I cut it or they missed when they did it. So it was really only going through the foam. And then I'm going to raise it up some more, and it looks like there's 3 hog rings on this holding this in place. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that one, and then it raises up. And the whole time I'm trying to keep my hands, not disturbing this stuff too much, okay? So I want the cotton to stay where it belongs, and I want the seat cover to come off in one piece. So we're clear on this side. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we can lift the whole seat cover off. So we're just going to do the same thing over here real quick. Now this one's got a hog ring. It's in tight, but I can see it right there. So we're just going to get in there and get that cut. Just like that. There's one that missed. So like I said, there's a lot in here that miss. They just, some guys will hog ring it from up here. Some will try to push through. I do it differently. I don't even use hog rings, and I'll show you that once we put it back together. I use something that was used on my Corvette, and I think it works really well. Some upholstery guys may disagree with me, but it works for me, and that's all that matters. So I'm just going to keep taking these off, and we'll get the seat cover off here. Okay, so we're loose. Just like that. So I don't want to just tear this off here. I want to make sure I slowly remove it. And we'll lift this up. And we got a couple of hog rings right here to get off, and that holds that back down inside there. Okay. Got it. Kind of hard to get those down inside there. Now this is the piece that actually pulls this corner down inside there, down inside the thing. Not that it matters that much because the seat back is sitting right up against it. So the seat cover's off in good condition. We have no problem with it. And the inspection tag on this one says 1995 as well. So we're just going to set that aside. We won't need it for a while. And now we have to start getting the foam pad off. So let me get this cardboard out of the way. We're going to reuse this. This protects the seat cover when it goes around the back here from the springs poking through and from the sharp sheet metal of the seat base. Okay, now we're going to gently we're going to leave everything in place, all the cotton. Now this looks like it was added by the upholstery. I don't think the factory had this on here. The seat, they put some foam or some cotton in here too. And you can, I don't know if you guys can tell, but this is the side with the new springs. So it's kind of up higher. When you pull the upholstery down, it would pull it back flat like it had it. So I'm not too worried about that because I'm pretty sure I'm going to take those springs out. So now we're going to gently try to remove the foam and try to leave everything in its place. There should be some burlap with a wire in it. So I'm just going to run my hand around here gently. I just want to take this off and set it aside. I don't want to tear it. I don't want to destroy it. We just basically are more interested in trying to fix the springs here. So we can just lift that off just like that. So, and hold your breath. You don't want to be breathing in somebody else's farts. So there's the bottom, there's the burlap. Here's the jute that was added by somebody else. We're going to maybe do something a little bit different because it all has to come off anyways. I'll do the same thing I did on the other seat. So let me go ahead and set this aside. And now I just need to get this jute off here. They hog ringed it on, which was smart because you don't want it bunching up. So I'm going to cut all the hog rings and get this jute out of the way, and then we're going to take a look at the seat itself and the springs and what we're going to do to get this thing riding a lot better than it is, because these are pretty soft, I'll tell you. That's just my finger pushing them down, and they're going down a lot easier. So the center ones are pretty much, worn out. So let me get this off, and then we'll take a look at the springs. Okay, so on this side, you can see there's a spring that's kind of bent back on itself and hooked into the clips on the base here. And then this spring also holds up the front corner. There are some clips right here, but they're not used. It wasn't used on the other seat, and it looked like there was never any spring in there. So we're not going to worry about that. But on this side, you can see that that spring on the other side is totally missing. They've replaced it with 3 coil springs, try to hold this up, and they've wrapped some red upholstery vinyl around here, and then just hog ring the crap out of it to protect probably the foam from pushing through. I don't know if this wire is broken underneath here, so we're going to undo this and take a look. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. If this was working, we may just leave it, but it looks like they slipped. These wires aren't connected properly, so I'm going to carefully start deconstructing this and see what we can do about getting this fixed up properly. Now, it feels okay, and I'm going to have to make a judgment call on what we do and what we don't do. My biggest concern on this are these springs right here. You can see these are just shot, right? I can just push them down really easy, and they're not connected together, and that's something we're going to do here in a minute. But let me step back on this thing and take a look at it and figure out what my game plan is, and then we'll start moving forward. Okay, I got a lot of it out of the way, and I figured out what's going on. So this wire right here, you guys can see that, that's broken off. So what they did was they jammed this wire into the original hole. They didn't bend it to shape, and then they just started hog ringing and wrapping vinyl upholstery material around it. Came around the corner, did the same thing over here. So all this right here really isn't needed. All we need to do is make the repair from, like here into that hole. And this isn't even the same gauge wire as that. So I'm going to look around, see if I can find something. It's pretty close. So what I want to do is, they didn't bend this to the right shape or anything. So I'm going to remove this piece right here. We're going to take it all the way off. And if it feels like it's decent enough gauge, what I'll do is I'm going to bend it. I'll match the other side over there, and I'm going to bend it to the proper shape, and then put it back in the hole and I'm going to try to tack it onto here. You know, I'm going to cut it and tack it here, 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 here. I'm just going to try to weld it back together. It's not like we're welding spring steel here, you know, like over here. We're just going to be, you know, kind of splicing this back onto here, and then that should fix that problem. And I'll stress test it a lot to make sure that it's okay, but that's going to be my repair instead of wrapping, you know, all this other stuff around here and having this wire in the place. I really needed to take all this off because I have to get to these little ferrule clamps here to break them loose, get them loose so I can get these springs out, bend the new spring material to match, and then put them back in place. So this needed to come off anyways, and really it didn't need to bend all the way around here like this. So I'm gonna try to weld it and see if we can make this repair. And then I'm still on the fence on about leaving these springs in place right here. I may remove them and see what's going on. If I can bend factory ones to the original shape and it's holding up properly, that's what we're going to do. But if I can't, then we're going to have to put these back in. But I'm thinking, and I don't know, this is the passenger seat, and there's no way a passenger seat took this kind of abuse. And I'm thinking what they did was they swapped the seats. Now these bases are pretty much symmetrical. So I think the seat where it bolts on may be slightly different, but they are pretty much identical pieces. So I think they may have just taken it and swapped it side to side and put the worn out seat on the passenger side and put the passenger seat, which is basically very little use, and put it over on the driver's side. Tried to just take the worn out one, put it where nobody sits, and put the one that's not as worn out where the driver is. But that's just a guess on my part. I'm not entirely sure, but there's I've never seen a passenger seat this banged up and broken. They just don't get enough use. So I'm going to go ahead and strip this thing down a little bit more, and we're going to bend up some wire and see if we can't tack weld this thing together. Okay, the autopsy on this seat is complete, and I think I figured out what killed this thing. So I did find a heavier piece of rod to replace that one they had in there. So it's just going to slide in here. I bent it to match, so it goes in just like that. And then we're going to clamp it and tack it on there right there, and that should make that repair. And then this spring, this sinuous spring right here, was also broken. So that is supposed to continue down just like on this side here. As you can see, it goes and then it bends, it clamps on, and then it goes this way and then hooks back to the base, and that adds the springing. This one is also missing on that side, and that's not part of these. It's separate, so you've just been a short one up. I hope I have enough spring material to replace those. If not, I do have the old springs off the other seat laying over there that I can use to get this done. Because on that seat, the other seat I did, the driver's seat, I only replaced the 4 center springs, because those were the ones were taking, the most clapped out and worn out, and I didn't want to get into those, and I knew I didn't have enough material to do those. But so I'm going to figure out how much material I have, because I really don't want to put 9 gauge in here and then have 11 gauge on this side. So I may just reuse the old spring material over there. It's not exactly bent to the proper shape, but I think I can cut it down, and then we can get it right in here, and then that will be good to go. We're going to get this welded, and we'll get this little piece made right here, and then the seat will at least be where I started on the driver's seat. So we're back getting the couch springs and all this material and all these screws and everything out, and we'll try to get this repaired back to where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go ahead and get this welded up and then get that repaired first, and then we're going to move on to getting this piece out and trying to make one to fit. Okay, we got this spring in. It's not clamped in yet. I wanted to get this one made. Now this is the one that was missing right here. It was just totally gone. They took it out, and maybe it was broken too. But look at that monster. That thing was pretty difficult to bend. Luckily, we had one on the other side for a pattern. So all we have to do is put that in, and it goes right here, and it acts to keep the side where the bolster is, keeps that up. So we're just going to slide this in if I can. Kind of hooks in here. It kind of speed up these little clips that hold the springs when they put those couch springs in there. See if we can get this driven home here where it belongs. And that looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to clamp this on. I'll just duplicate whatever they did on the other side. And I believe it clamps here, here, and that's it on this one. And then the other one will clamp here and here and here. And then these will be in place. And then we're basically ready to start making up the ones that's all I want to do is change out the ones in the middle. But we got a little sidetracked with a little repair job on this thing. So it's looking really pretty good. I'm liking the way it feels. And you notice it's sitting more at the proper height. When those couch springs were in there, it was way up here, and then you pulled down on the fabric to stretch it down around to hold it in the right height. So hopefully this is going to be comfortable, and it's going to ride well, and we shouldn't have any problems. So let me get these little clamps on here. I'm just going to go around and use the pliers and crimp those all the way around, and then we'll be ready to start taking these springs out and making them one by one. I generally just take one out at a time, make it, put the new one in, and then move to the next one. That way I don't screw anything up. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these on, and then we'll start getting these springs in the middle replaced, which was the initial goal of this whole video. So you never know what you're going to find when you dig into these old cars. I mean, we found a lot of other stuff underneath the engine compartment. Now we're finding stuff underneath the seat. Okay guys, we're gonna have to cut this one off right here. It's getting way too long. Those couch springs and the broken parts and everything just made this video way longer than I thought it was gonna be. So there'll be a part 2, and we'll get into making some springs and getting that seat cover back on, which is really my whole plan in the first place. So it got a little bit longer than I thought, you know, getting in there and doing all those repairs. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and mash that bell icon so you get notifications every time I release a new video. We'll see you on part 2.